Hello from an unexpectedly snowy and cold Swindon in the UK. Um, my name's Tom. I think I've been here a few times now, but some of you probably don't know me. I'm the chief learning geek at Evolve Learning Design. Because if you're going to set up your own business, you may as well give yourself a funny job title. Um, this shows a weird one, where basically I've spent the last two years figuring out how to turn my house and garage into a functioning office space effectively, for me and the people in the business, and this has led in the current scenario to really having some thinking about what makes for a good home working environment, and more importantly, how I can use that to justify my addiction to purchasing gear, be it audio, video, computer, or networking, or just about anything else, really. So there was a couple of things, I guess, a couple of um, sort of areas to go over. Um, we'll have a bit of a chat about home working and maybe the difference between currently working at home and needing a home office, because they are two slightly different situations. Some considerations that often get overlooked when setting up a home working space. I know we got a couple of questions in ahead of time in the Slack channel. And then I want to talk about how gear, and this is sort of my area of love with gear, um, how gear can not only help you do your job, but make you more efficient and more effective at doing your job. And if you're a freelancer or a small business owner, can earn you more money by making you more efficient. So one thing to definitely say, to everyone who's in the chat, if you've got questions, if you want to talk about a particular type of gear, if you're thinking about making a decision about buying something or not buying something, or setting something up or not, throw it out there. Let's discuss it. I am by no means an expert in anything I'm talking about. I've just bought a stupid amount of stuff and therefore can probably offer some insight. Even if it's, oh my goodness, don't buy that, you'll regret it. I did. There's a long list of those items that we might go through today. So I guess let's start with the home working situation. It's obviously really big at the minute, but it's so important, especially for us, that some of us will be working at home forevermore. Some of us, as soon as this situation ends, will go back to the office. There are still some businesses that insist that you need to be here to be working. That's a different discussion, probably, and they require slightly different things. If you're just working at home temporarily, you're probably not going to want to re-network your house and set up a server in the garage. However, if you're setting a home office, later on, I'll talk to you about why that's exactly what you want to do. So let's talk then about the sort of things that you might want in either scenario. First of all, the things that are going to get overlooked. And the first thing probably to talk about, my favorite piece of gear, the best thing I ever purchased whilst working at home. And it's the thing I use every single day and the thing that gets used the most every single day. And it's my chair. And this is the thing that everyone overlooks in their home working setup. You will sit in your chair for what, 8 to 10 hours a day potentially, and yet so many people will buy a £20 IKEA chair, or a gaming chair, which is almost worse in some scenarios, and then 6 months later wonder why whenever they stand up they're in horrendous amounts of pain. Obviously, this is not going to be a lesson in ergonomics. I don't know anything about it, but I do know that if you're going to buy one bit of gear while setting up your home studio or your home office, buy a good chair. I went through 4, maybe 5 chairs before I finally started watching chair reviews online. And that is a weird thing to type into Google, but there's lots of them. Whether it's your Herman Miller chairs, or as I've landed on the autonomous ergo chair, and it's fantastic. It's like the best. I think it's about £300, which for a chair is a bargain. Um, Two $200 on a used Herman Miller. That is an absolute bargain. So I saw in the chat someone's got a Herman Miller for $200. That is a heck of a deal. But yeah, if you're looking to buy new, the Ergo chair offers a fantastic price for what it is. Setting aside the chair and the ergonomics of your workstation, because a lot of that is sorry, I saw a message come through. So it's got a pretty chair, but they need a good chair. Yes, that so often is the trend. The Ergo chair and the Herman Millers aren't much to look at, but you can stand up after sitting in them for several hours. So that's a major positive. So moving on from chairs, I guess, to slightly more interesting, probably more expected areas of gear. Probably do you use the neck part of your chair and does it help? Yes, massively so. So that I'll lean out of the way. You've got this fantastic adjustable neck and headrest on the Ergo chair, and it's fantastic because it also flexes with the rest of the chair. So if you go back, it goes back and adjusts the angle accordingly to keep you in a kind of sensible place. Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and that's exactly it. When you're working in an office, you know you're going to be provided with, in the UK, it's DSE assessments. There's an obligation to provide you with equipment that keeps you in good posture and in good health and those kinds of things. At home, you're just kind of expected to get on with it. If you're setting up your own business, investment in a chair is something that's well worth it, because when you are sat there at 3 a.m. doing your accounts the day before the tax bill is due, being comfortable will make it slightly better. Don't do that. Do it in advance or get an accountant. So we shan't call the accountant gear, but it's a useful purchase nonetheless. I guess moving on to more interesting and more exciting bits of gear. I think the biggest running conversation in our industry, at least, is I want to buy a computer. Do I buy a laptop? Do I buy a desktop? Do I buy a Windows computer? Do I buy a Mac? And it's a really difficult sort of topic. And I would put my hands up immediately and say I'm incredibly biased, only in the sense that I would buy whatever does my job best. And I think that's maybe an area where, as an industry, we need to have more conversations that become a bit more tech savvy. We don't all need to become, IT engineers, but I've always argued that if your livelihood is centered around the ability to create digital content, or basically, if you don't have a computer, you can't earn money, you really need to have a good understanding of what your bit of kit is, what it can do, and if it goes wrong, what can you do to fix it? I see there's a couple of coming here. I've just purchased, went nuts on a desktop, but have a decent laptop, but it doesn't cut it sometimes with video production. Couldn't agree more. And this is where my next point was, I would only ever get a laptop if portability was the be all and end all. And absolutely, if the company you're working for chooses for you, you get absolutely no choice. You're exactly right there, Q, certainly. Hopefully, most people get what they need, but I know there is a propensity among businesses to give everyone a laptop, which is a bit unhelpful in a lot of scenarios. I can see someone's already jumping on to the next point as well about having a backup machine. Love it. So we'll come back to that, and why my office is quite noisy, and why the garage radiates heat, and we're not doing anything illegal. So yeah, your main computer, I've always been a big advocate of really understanding it, if possible, building it yourself. Certainly if it's a desktop, even if you're buying it off the shelf, learn how to take it apart, learn how to change things, learn how to upgrade things. I quite happily put my hand up and say I'm a gear addict. I spend far too much on stuff that I don't really need. But computers have reached a point where they are incredibly simple to work with. pretty much everything can be pulled out and plugged back in and it will work again. It's not a guarantee. Don't do it unless you know what you're doing, but it really isn't that complicated. A quick bit of Googling and a couple of YouTube videos, you can build a computer now. Because literally, if you have a look at a computer motherboard, the circuit board inside, it's literally labeled in little white writing all over the board, and it tells you what to plug in where. You can't go too far wrong. That's not to say everyone should do that straight away, but getting familiar with your hardware, understanding which bits of your computer allow it to do what, allows you to plan your route forwards. So, for instance, if you're going to spend, a couple of £1,000 on a computer, is that hardware about to be massively obsolete, or is that hardware going to see you through a couple of years? If something does become obsolete or you change direction, say, for instance, you go from mostly working in storyline, a bit of word processing, a bit of image editing, to doing a lot of video editing, do you have the option to upgrade relevant components like your processor, your graphics card? Not necessarily about the ability to have or ability to do it yourself, but even if you then go and pay someone to do it, knowing that you can do that, knowing that the gear you are buying is going to be, to a certain extent, future-proofed as much as any kind of technology can. I can see a few messages coming through. Someone talking about refurbed stuff. So I'll touch on I'll jump ahead to some refurb stuff now, and that's exactly what I was going to suggest. I would say another question is: do I buy new? Do I buy workstation? Do I buy a desktop computer? Whatever, that kind of thing. And the answer really is my answer anyway is buy what you can afford. For a lot of hardware, especially refurbished computer hardware, especially in the business world, it's perfectly good. Sure, we've all worked for businesses that have then, exactly, the best you can afford, or probably the best you can afford, the most efficient thing you can afford. Because simply buying the best computer, sometimes we kind of lump all IDs into one group. I know plenty of IDs that will never use anything but Word, PowerPoint. Maybe they dip into Rise. They don't need to buy, really anything beyond a very entry-level laptop or desktop computer. They aren't going to push that hardware. Sorry, I got confused by your message there. Yes, in terms of that, and that's where it comes back to picking components. You're exactly right, Elisa. You need that base understanding. It means, so I'm getting confused by your comments. Meaning pick components, not physically build. No, don't worry. I'll try to figure. Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. So you're talking about a situation where you pick the components because you know that's what you're getting, but you don't need to physically build it yourself. Got you. Yes, that works just the same. Having that level of understanding is really useful to be able to say, I'm going to be video editing, so I probably need a minimum of an 8 gigabyte graphics card. And I want to make sure it's going to be of a relatively recent generation to ensure I've got the speed that I want. And I want, at least a quad core processor to make sure I can make the most of X, Y, and Z. And yes, Facebook Marketplace is another thing we'll touch on. It's been the bane of my my bank account in the last 6 months. We'll cover that in the efficiency component. Yes. So that's the other side of the Mac argument. So we're just skipping ahead down my points now. This is marvelous. I don't have to really do anything. Don't have to organize anything. So the other sort of discussion between Mac and Windows is what runs on what. And I would say that's probably the biggest decider whether to go Mac or Windows, because Mac's becoming really, really popular with a lot of designers, especially. It has been for a long time. A lot of people who deal with audio. It's fantastic for low latency audio recording. But the simple fact is, in the ID world, a lot of the software that is our bread and butter just doesn't work on the Mac ecosystem, or doesn't work well, or what's the correct word? It's funny, you come on a show like this and you forget all the big words that you use. It doesn't run natively. That's what I'm looking for. It doesn't run natively on that platform. So whilst you can look at setting up story, is there anything else besides storyline? I know it has when I last used Captivate, it wasn't Mac friendly. But I'm not going to lie, I kind of haven't looked at Captivate in a long time. But on the whole, Mac struggles with a lot of software that's easier to run or cheaper to run on other things. Hey, there we go. That's good to hear. That's, as I said, it's been a long time since I've even looked at Captivate, to be honest. Smashing stuff. It's good to hear that they've got that. In fairness, Adobe does a lot of work to try and work with the Mac ecosystem really well, and a lot of their products do. So yeah, I would say that's the major sort of argument between Windows and Mac. It's what software are you going to run? Will it run? Yes or no? There we go. So that's yeah. Oh, here's something from Luis actually about Mac. But the ecosystem, yes. Awesome. So yeah, Luis is talking about the ecosystem there, which is really cool. So that's, I think, I was going to talk about getting, not so much getting trapped, but getting into different ecosystems in a bit. But I'll jump into that now. I think having access to both is a great thing. I recently purchased my first Mac. That's my regret purchase of 2021 already, right there. I won't lie to you. But it's very useful for one particular job, which I'll touch on later about the efficiency thing, although it may not seem it. So biggest reason, choosing your software. The next thing really is going to be what else you're attaching to it. So for instance, if for my camera here today and my microphone, I put that all through PCI Express expansion. That's not so much an option with the Mac platform. By going down the Mac route, you trade off. You get that fantastic wall-gardened ecosystem, but you give up that I'm going to take the side panel off and I'm going to install a da-da-da-da. And it's just going to work, whether it's additional PCI Express cards, graphics cards, memory. And certain Macs have kind of moved around that. The Mac Pro offered something, but then you're looking at incredibly high end. For most of us buying a Mac, we're buying a Mac Mini or something less expandable. But then let's move away from the kind of computery stuff and talk about some of the more fun doodads that are more kind of individualized, the things that make up a really great home office. So one of the things that has become really popular over the last 5 or 6 years really has been internet streaming. And this has led to some massive jump forward in terms of webcam technology and what's possible in terms of jumping on a call like this, or jumping onto Zoom, or jumping onto Skype or Teams, or whatever your choice of software is. And one of the quickest ways to make a good first impression to a client or an employer or another department is that digital experience, especially at the moment. And that's where your options of things like hooking up an existing camera or a camera phone come in. Having a tripod and a bracket and a microphone on your desk. But again, a tricky thing to get into because you can throw a lot of money away very, very quickly. I know I have would be down cameras and express cards and interfaces and mics that are just either too much for what you really need, or not enough. Right place as opposed to where the laptop puts them. Yes, that's kind of one of the biggest things that can happen, is that laptops, there was an odd trend on some laptops to put them below the screen for a while, so they kind of looked up your nose the whole time. And then there was also the put it right at the top, which is still too low, but just at an odd angle, so you're constantly re-angling your screen. Having a kind of separate setup, choosing what you buy, allows you to create something that you can look straight on into the camera for. It gives such a different impression. And the same with audio. They say that the best video is all about the audio. When you score a film, that film score brings it to life. And to a lesser degree, I grant you, it's not a masterpiece of a Zoom call, but the audio on a Zoom call really is what is going to carry most of the information across. So getting a really, really clean line to the other person is so important, and doesn't need to cost a lot of money. Like you were being talked to, yes, exactly. It gives me, in my particular setup, it gives me the ability to have the screen here, another screen here, and the camera dead ahead. It means I can focus on the delivery rather than the emails coming in over here or whatever it might be. Because that's the other thing, when the screen is right in front of you, you will inherently look at the screen and not the camera. So separating the two really, really helps. When it comes to that, there are loads of options from, the kind of streaming world, as I've said, has driven a lot of this technology. So you've got things like the Elgato capture cards, the PCI Express ones. You've also got things like the little USB ones that you can chuck in a bag anywhere and take with you, which is really, really handy. Also really great for screen capture. If you haven't got anything to do it locally, or there's a problem with protected information or whatever it might be, allows you to capture stuff really easily. But then you've also got the slightly higher end stuff by companies like Magewell, that you only really need to look at if you're looking to record, 10-bit 4K color or something like that, which, for the vast majority of situations isn't going to be necessary. Can see yet 2 monitor setup with a laptop camera has me staring off into space on a Zoom call while I look at the big screen. Yeah, that's it. It's tricky, and again, I think it's one of those bits of kit where if it's something that's important to you, if it's something where, for instance, in my case, this is how I connect with potential clients. This is how ultimately I sell my business to someone. So it's really important that first impression does give the right feeling. If you're jumping on a Teams call to discuss Secret Santa, it's probably less important, unless you're angling for that really awesome gift or something. But it is worth considering, especially in our industry, where increasingly we are equal parts learning designers and media creators. Having the ability to not just stream but record really high quality video and audio, it's really handy. So that's kind of the video perspective. When it comes to audio, it's become very popular to have, I would argue, overly expensive microphones. I've certainly got my share, but to be honest, the ones that I tend to find work well, the ones that for most people are exactly what they need, are USB condenser microphones. Things like the Blue Yeti, where you just plug the USB in and away you go. You don't tend to have any problems. It works with everything. It connects to everything straight away. It has incredibly low latency. The other side of that is obviously, you've bought an ergo chair. Excellent. They do have a commission system. I should have brought a code with me. But no, you'll love it. Great chair. Their desks are great as well. They do an awesome smart desk that's like a motorized rising falling thing. Phenomenal. Just can't fit one in my room. So yeah, when it comes to audio, I'd argue that for 99% of users, a USB microphone is fine. And if you want to go down the XLR route, I was speaking to someone just the other day actually, and they'd purchased an old it's an AKG microphone, a D2000, incredibly expensive microphone, incredibly expensive, and hours trying to tune it in, get it to the right volume levels for different streaming services. Whereas having gone through a couple of mics, I found that a simple Rode dynamic microphone cost about £100, was fine. XLR, going down that route, costs a lot more. So I would say you only want to do that if you have a reason to do it. So if you're going to be using the microphones away from the computer, if you're going to be dealing with music recordings, if you want to do, that next level of audio work, to me, that's when you should start looking at XLR and interfaces to plug into and different preamps that are available. To avoid feedback. Yeah. So when I'm on calls, I recently switched I use this microphone. I use a different set of headphones though. I tend to use these are in-ear monitors that musicians might use. So I recently switched over to these purely because I was using them anyway when recording, and so kind of just started using them anyway and realized they're actually a lot easier to wear than big over-ear headphones for hours at a time. But yeah, I think Q's got an interesting setup there actually, where he's got two mics, fancy mic for VO and a Jabra headset for everything else. That's awesome. I think that's, especially as the Jabra stuff tends to avoid a lot of that irksome dialing in that you have to go through. And don't get me wrong, I just going back, I love wearing over-ear headphones whenever I'm doing any long work. I'll wear those, but these are great for calls because you also don't look like sort of an old school Cyberman with a big headset on, which is quite nice. It makes you look a bit more human, and also great again if you're going to start recording video and you will want to be able to monitor the audio that's being recorded as it's recorded without any feedback into the video recording. These allow you to do that without it showing up in the video too much. You're not going to want to record all your videos with a great big headset on. But again, all those things are, I would argue, nice to haves, but they do add up to a more clean, professional look at the end. Being able to give a nice, clear image, clear sound, being able to hear what's going on without feedback, all adds up to a better experience. So I said right back at the start that I would mention maybe some of the things that I bought that were really stupid. Do I recommend any brand of earplug? Recommend, yes, Ultimate Ears. However, they are excruciatingly expensive because they are molded to your ear. They are a complete waste of money unless you're going to be playing instruments live. If you want something similar to that, but on a more cost-effective basis, Fender do a whole range of just like normal earbud ones, great sound quality. And they come, rather than silicon, they come with like memory foam tips, which mold to your ear quite nicely over time. And they cost £60-70, if I remember correctly. They're great if you don't want to spend huge sums of money. Other than that, to be honest, again, if you're not doing audio work, what headphones came with your last mobile phone? If they connect up to your computer and you can hear through them, what more do you need? I think this is one of the big issues with the potential around buying gear. I love buying new stuff. I love buying shiny new toys, but you can waste money. And that's where this next story comes in. At the middle of 2019, I decided that as a business, we were going to pivot. And in 2020, we were going to focus on meeting people on site and producing really high quality video content of them. Yeah. So the year of lockdown was the year where we bought high-end cameras and memory media and set ourselves up to be that business. There is a lot of very expensive camera equipment sat on a shelf. It's basically what happened there. Oh, I use the audio chief and stereo to mono cable. Use one. Love that. That's an awesome idea. They with the stereo to mono cable to split it down. I'd never even thought of doing that. To be fair, that's a great way of piping that. Good stuff. I'm going to steal that and go and buy a new cable. There we are. That's more gear for me to buy. But that's just an example of how if you buy not necessarily the wrong gear, but you overbuy, you overcommit to an idea, it can be a little bit unhelpful. Certainly to the finances. And again, you end up with equipment that, yeah, you can use it, but you're never going to get the full benefit of it. So perhaps scale it back and just buy what you need at any given time, rather than always trying to get the best in class of any given thing you're buying. Rather than thinking about what's the best I can afford, focus more on what do I need to get the job done to a good standard. And then, if you then want to go and buy the deluxe premium gold plated version, because there will be one of pretty much anything you can buy, go for it. But don't jump there straight away, I guess would be my advice. So I said at the start about talking about how gear can make you more efficient. And this is the bit I get excited about with gear, because this is why my house is somewhat full of cables, which is that my computer that I built and upgrade and all this kind of thing does very little. It's basically the box from which I access other places. And that's because I've basically removed any files, any video content, any storage is all held on a series of servers. And this is where you kind of get the idea of, there's a data farm in the garage. It's not quite like that. But it becomes a really, really handy thing when it comes to publishing, rendering videos. If anyone's ever worked on really big video files, either in terms of there's lots of motion graphics in them, or it's a massive resolution, or it's a very long video, or there's just lots of videos to do. Being able to send that off somewhere else to be rendered, leaving your computer free for you to carry on working, is a massive benefit. It frees up so much of your time. It also means that I can work all day and then send stuff to the rendering server and just leave it to run overnight. It's fantastic. Come back in the morning, check the files, send to client. It's a great example of how gear can make you more efficient. It also makes the business more secure. Just before we went live, me and Louise had a slightly bizarre conversation about data backup, but this is another reason to have other systems available to you rather than just your one computer. Often when we think about backup, we think, oh yeah, I've saved something to that external hard drive. Hard drives fail. They really do, especially mechanical hard drives. Too near a magnet, you leave them in a place that gets too hot, too cold, they just wear out, you drop them. These things are all prone to lose your data. Once you get into the world of having, server storage available to you, you can get into the world of redundancy, where if a hard drive fails, it's fine. The server can rebuild your data for you. You get into the world of what I call a 3-2-1 data backup setup. So 3-2-1 being the idea of you have 3 copies of everything, 2 locally and 1 remote. So the 1 remote, you can use a service like Backblaze. Backblaze is fantastic. Small monthly fee, unlimited backup storage. Absolutely fantastic. You lose the data, they'll post you a hard drive with it on. Superb. Or you can download it if it's smaller files and you've got a decent internet connection. Then 2 copies here means that they're sat on 2 different servers, constantly available to be accessed. And perfect example there from Alexa. You drop an external drive, you couldn't get it to work after that. you've kind of done the right thing by keeping stuff on an external drive, but it just doesn't offer you that same level of protection. And the historic argument against this, of course, has been cost. Servers are expensive, computers are expensive, servers are expensive, running them is expensive, but that really has changed. I only run them because they are cost effective. So, I mean, we've got a 24U rack, and I think 18 of those are full. So we've got 18 lines full on the rack, and none of them have cost more than £200. So what's that? 230, 250 US. The used market for servers is phenomenal. Whether it's eBay, Facebook Marketplace that I said we'd come on to earlier. Literally this week, I picked up 2 new servers off Facebook Marketplace for £20 each because someone just wanted them gone. A lot of these things come out of DNS places. They come out of small businesses. They come out of data centers. They've been used, but actually this hardware will go for years and years and years. It's so useful to be able to have those options, to have external storage, to have an external rendering server, and just constantly work off your internal network rather than work off your local machine, which is always going to be more prone to losing data or something going wrong, because desktop computers just don't have the protection of servers. On a technical level, they don't have things like ECC memory and caching, and they don't have redundancy in the RAID setup in a computer. So if the hard drive goes, the hard drive goes, unlike in a server where it can rebuild the data. And again, setting it up couldn't be simpler. Ultimately, it's another computer in your home. You want to hook it up to your network, not reliant on your internet connection speed, but on a physical cable. So for me, the cables run from the server to a switch. My computer in here is also connected to the switch, meaning it has access to everything that's on those servers. So when I'm editing a whole bunch of video off the cameras, that never leaves the servers. We edit it right there on the server space. We're just accessing it through the workstation. What that means is if someone else picks up the project, they can just access it and go. It also means that if something were to happen to my PC, there was a crash, the data's nowhere near my computer. So that I see, what kind of servers? They're a real mix. I've got a lot of old HP G8s. I've got a couple of old Google servers. They're always good whenever you can get your hands on them. I bought a few recently that are, what are they called? I've had them shipped over from the States. The Hive servers, fantastic little shallow things. They only take a couple of hard drives in each, but they're great for processing because they each, or computing rather, because they each take 2 Xeon processors. And that's the other thing you can get with servers is there's less need to buy high-end servers because you're not in a rush. If the server is busy rendering video and it says, oh, this is going to take 45 minutes, it's less of an issue because I can just crack on and use my PC and do the next one, or reply to emails or do whatever I need to do, or go to bed and not leave the computer on. Servers inherently use or are designed to power down, use less power in general. They tend to be, if you look after them correctly and don't overload them, you can put them in places like I have mine in the garage, so they're not bothering me if they are on overnight. It's a big step to take, and I said at the start there were certain things gear-wise that would only make sense if you were working at home forever. That's one of them. That's a big reason. But I think I've just noticed the time. It's already been nearly 40 minutes. So I just wanted to go back. There was a question on the Slack channel about how to approach your boss about getting a home working setup. I would say if you're being expected to work from home, I would expect any decent employer to, especially at the moment, bend over backwards to make sure you're looked after. However, we all know that's not going to be the not going to be the case. But What you can do is talk to them about efficiency. Tell them that if you've got a laptop that overheats every 5 minutes, you're not going to get a lot of work done. Point out the fact that if your back ends up being horrendously painful, you're going to be less efficient. They're going to make less money out of you. Just like we would when we're selling a learning solution to someone or trying to persuade someone to buy into our proposed learning solution, put it in their terms. Don't talk to them about your comfort, talk to them about their profit. And I guarantee you a workforce with laptops that can't do the job, that need to restart every 20 minutes or overheat, screens that don't give you color accurate work if that's important for what you're doing. All those things are things you can tie back and say, if I don't have the right equipment, the work quality will go down, you'll make less money. That's certainly, you know, whenever I have the conversation and people go, oh, but why bother? That's why I did. That's why I converted the garage. Staff can't come here anymore, but that's why I put that all in place to make sure that when they were working, they could come here and there was never a, but I don't have. If something's going to make you better at your job, it's not a purchase of a whim. It's not a want. It's not necessarily a need, because if you've got a working laptop, you can technically do your job. But the question is not, can you do your job? It's, can you do your job well? Can you excel? Can you be efficient? And to me, that's where the beauty of all this new sort of tech gear is. It's not in being able to do your job, because we could do our jobs 5 years ago with 5-year-old tech. What we can do now is make ourselves more efficient and more effective by using technology that's available. That's tough. You got all your computers locked down, so you can't even use a USB drive. And from a from a network integrity perspective, I can get that, but it is overkill, really. Or they could at least provide you with it. Oh, there we go. It sounds like you went through the red tape and it was worth it. That's good to hear. And I think it does make a difference being able to just use those little things that speed up your workflow. And for me, that's what the servers are for. That's what the camera's for. That's what extra screens are for, and keyboards and all these kinds of things. You've got to find the things that save you the most time, that make you the most efficient, and that's the gear for you. It's got less to do with I like this brand or that brand. And I guess we're coming near the end. So that would be the kind of, from me, if I had to say one thing about gear, it would be never be a fan of a company, because none of them care, in terms of tech at least. They want to make as much money as possible. So buy the best product for what you need, for what you want to do, and that will look after you in future as much as possible. And avoid going, I'll buy from them because they're such and such. I guess just in the last couple of minutes, if anyone wants to have a chat about gear or tech or anything like that, do throw me a question, drop me an email, catch me on Slack. I'm always happy to talk about it. Awesome. Well, with that, I don't think I certainly, I've gone through all my notes, and some of you have helped me through my notes. So I guess there's like a minute left. Does anyone have anything they wanted to ask? No, I think we're all good. I've helped people spend money. Huzzah, I have passed on the problem. There you go. That's
okay. I got some questions for you, Tom.
Go for it.
So you're what kind of webcam do you use?
So right now I am, this is ridiculous. I'm recording this into a Lumix GH5, which is somewhat overkill. So that's going into a one of those Magewell cards that I was telling you about.
Right.
So this is the kind of problem I have.
GH5, that's a mirrorless camera, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I love the GH5, it's the kind of middle of the road camera for me, because it does 4K 10-bit color if you go to an external recorder, but you aren't carrying around like a brick. So it's perfect. Brilliant camera.
And pretty much, I think I think most everybody, like, you know, if your computer or your laptop is like, you know, a year or two old, I think the built-in webcam should be okay and good enough for you. Otherwise, yeah, right.
And this is it. I think, like I said, gear is all about deciding what's worth it for you. For, you know, if in your environment the webcam it does the job and you don't have any issues, don't buy something else.
Right.
It's all about finding the things that, or if you're like me, you just want stuff, buy it, go for it. But generally speaking, pick the stuff that's going to improve the most for you.
And I can tell you right now, from all the meetings that I'm in, and even doing these, you know, these broadcasts, I think audio, I'm more particular about audio than I am about videos. And like that said, I have a Sony A6000, which is also a, you know, a kind of a higher end camera, which is probably way overkill for this, but you know, I have it, and that's what I use for my broadcasts. But I do like to make sure that that I've got good audio going. So I've got an Audio Technica AT 2020 or something like that. It's something. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't ridiculously expensive, but it's a nice microphone. The other thing is wired connections. Are you like, what are you running right now? Are you wired in or are you wireless?
Oh, always wired. Nothing. I can't stand running on Wi-Fi. It's slow. It drops. Okay, if you've got a really great Wi-Fi signal, great. I pay a fortune and it's still spotty as anything. So no, when when we moved in, the first job was, right, I want Cat 8 everywhere. I want which it is a job, but it's worth doing. Because I don't get those dropouts. It's great.
Yeah, when you're working from home, if you just want to like be able to, especially if you're, you know, regularly in meetings and stuff, that's like one of the first things you should look at is whether or not you're wired up, and it's so important now. Let's see, what's Kim saying? If the camera is too high res, might that cause a video stream to be lower quality for low bandwidth viewers? Great question, Kim. What do you say, Tom?
It will depend on the platform more than anything else. So most, and the idea I use here is with YouTube. YouTube will dynamically select what resolution you can bring down. So yeah, as Q said there, I think Crowdcast just caps out at 720. So, you know, we can both be piping in 4K signals. It's not going to send that out.
And so, yeah, that's kind of my other question. And I asked, who did I ask? I asked Matt Pierce from TechSmith about this, but, you know, what is it? Elgato has those 4K, you know, sticks that you can use to plug your high end camera into. But is that overkill for if you're live streaming? Like, why, you know, like if Crowdcast tops out at 720p?
Yeah, I think it does depend. So for instance, I use the 4K recording largely for professional work as opposed to streaming. I don't adjust it because once I've got it set, I just want to leave it alone. As we all know, once you've got technology working, you don't fiddle with it anymore. But yeah, I think they can be worth the money. For instance, a company in the UK called Media Zoo came up with a fantastic idea where they were sending out kits this year with a 4K camera, the stick, you plug it in and you record it onto OBS. So you've got a lovely, crisp 4K recording, all done at home with kit that came to you in the post in like a backpack. So it works really well for that kind of thing. Do you need 4K to go on Skype? No, because no one's going to view it in 4K. Right. And you also have to ask how many members of your audience have a 4K display. Not many businesses are giving all their employees 4K laptops. Let's be honest.
Totally. Yeah. I love this. That Kitzal really pointed out how important light is, which is kind of like, that's my challenge. Like I have, you know, because I did this dark background behind me. It was like my wife got me this chalkboard paint, and I'm like, oh yeah, whenever I have ideas, I'll just write them back here. But then I never do because, I don't know, I kind of don't want people to see how lame my ideas are. So I don't write anything. right stuff. But it's
Absolutely.
kind of dark, and I put this blue light back there to try to give it some contrast. And then I also bought like this panel that's over here to my right. And thanks, Kim. And so it does give me some light, but I still need to work on how I've got everything configured. I'm just not that great at it yet.
Yeah, light I think is one of those things where, I mean, when I was in education, that's where I started, was in video and lights and sound. We spent probably 6 months really understanding how light works, and that's only at a very basic level. You look at people in the real lighting industry, they spend years mastering their craft. But that's where some of these great streaming tools come into effect. You look at companies like Elgato, you look at Magewell, you look at some of these other things. They kind of sell you ready to go kits, so you don't have to go down that route. You can buy that, and they kind of guide you through the setup, which is great.
Yeah. How about your monitor setup? What are you sporting right now?
Oh, so at the moment I've got an MSI Prestige widescreen. It's great, but I would never recommend someone buy it. It gets so, by the end of the day, it's too hot to touch.
So wait, it's a single monitor. How many inches?
So single monitor on that. It's a 47-inch widescreen.
Oh my God.
And then there's that's kind of over here. And then on this side of the camera, I've got a smaller 27-inch display.
Okay.
So that monitor. Absolutely, yeah. I think that's it's really handy to be able to just say, this is where I work, and this is where Slack and emails and all that stuff sits, because it takes it out of that direct view, which is really helpful.
Hey, folks in chat, I want to see how many people are using multiple monitors. I'd love to know if anybody is using a single monitor, if you still use, okay, Christiana's she's using, okay, Kate's got 3, Lisa's got 2 right now, Kim's got 2.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. Dual for Mike. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that is absolutely ideal. I mean, to me, I can't work with a single monitor anymore. In fact, right now I actually switch between 2 workstations on a regular basis, and I have just a monitor switcher that shares between an iMac and then a 2019 MacBook. And so I have one middle monitor that I switch between and just go back and forth all day, like while I'm working. But then I've also put my iPad in the middle here, which I'm building out, like using for all my systems development stuff. So I kind of have to have multiple monitors now. It's required.
Absolutely. I think operating systems are becoming more and more cluttered as well as our user interfaces. Everything's got so many options now. You've got to have space. It's the reason I got the widescreen. So whenever I'm video editing, trying to video edit on a standard monitor is just impossible now. You can't see anything. You need that extra space.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Definitely.
Kit's all saying, shouldn't tell Luis that his new iPad will allow sidecar. Yeah, I know. Actually, I think I bought Duet, I think it is that I used when I was on a trip, and I just haven't installed the app. But yeah, using an extra iPad as a monitor. The person that has probably the most impressive desk setup that I've seen is Nick Floro. I got it. If you look back in the Slack channel, I posted he sent a picture of his workstation, and I was like absolutely blown away. I think he had maybe 6 monitors, and I mean, it was just like this wall
of monitor.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane and impressive, and it was breathtaking, actually. And as much as I'd say that, like, I would aspire to that, I just couldn't. It would probably just drive me crazy. Yeah, and Luis was Floro'd. Yeah,
and I think that's the prime example of buy for what you need. Right. 6 monitors is really cool. I couldn't do it. It would be too much light on my, coming in all the time.
Yeah.
But if it suits what he's doing, perfect. Same with, like I said, every bit of gear is ultimately reliant on, is it useful to you? Otherwise, it can be fantastic, but utterly useless and junk, really.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you were talking servers earlier. Here's,
Mm,
and we had that bizarre conversation about backups. But what
absolutely.
is your backup strategy? Are you running like just
Mm.
for your typical person, like just not like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like having a NAS and a RAID setup or anything. Like if it were just somebody working from home,
See,
how do
I
you
would
make?
I would still say stick to the 321. The 321 is so easy. 3 copies of every file, 2 locally, 1 remote. So keep one on your computer, put one on an external drive, and send one to your, I don't know, your Google Drive or
Mhm,
your Microsoft OneDrive, or pay the £10 a month or whatever it is for Backblaze as a backup process. That, and the only reason you have that external copy is house fire, burglary, things like that. The
mhm.
unforeseen calamities that can happen and you lose your data. Um, so yeah, 321 works at any scale, which is why it's such a great concept behind data backup. You should, in theory, never be able to lose a file if you follow that system.
Right. Okay. So, from a PC environment, what do you use to automate backups on, say, like a local drive, like an external drive?
So that's so my how would I do that? If I was going to the only automated one that I would use on my local PC would be a Backblaze,
Hmm.
because they provide automation for you. So you can install a client and say well, you can do it every minute, which is overkill, or you can do it every 24 hours, which is more practical,
Hmm.
to do a backup. And that will make sure it only takes the latest files. In terms of going to the local drive, there are tons of downloadable clients you can use. Because I use an external system, I use a Proxmox setup, where it just automatically runs a script. And if anything is left on the workstation, it pulls it over. But again, if you're going on a slightly smaller setup, I would just use something like Backblaze. It's worth the money to know that it's going to be done every day without fail.
Right.
And then your second local copy at that point, you can maybe be a bit more relaxed with. If you know you've got a remote copy going out every 24 hours, once a week, just Friday, end of the day, just go right back up and know
Nice.
that it's done as you go into the weekend.
Super important. Super important. Wow.
Absolutely.
There is an interesting suggestion here from Susan about something that records and captures everything that's spoken and discussed during an online meeting. I'm going to have to check that out and see what that is. It's got a shortened link. So, Mars View dash
Ooh,
AI. We'll have to take a look at that. Thanks for posting, Susan. We'll take a
that's really
look. So,
cool.
anything else like any other tips? Just, I know that like especially nowadays, everyone's working from home. People are going to be like, like at some point maybe going back to the office, and then you have your IT department to kind of take care of you, and you don't have to worry about stuff as much. But being at home, you're kind of on your own with a lot of things, right? And so, I think you've provided some great information to help us out. But any last words on this one?
I would say get inquisitive about the technology that you use. Get to know it. I think that's the biggest thing we forget to do. We rely on it, but when it goes wrong, too often we're left in the dark. So really get inquisitive, learn about it, and maybe start trying to spot ways to make your own life easier by utilizing the technology that's available to you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nice, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I do think, as you were talking through this, I do think that it'd be fun to do a TLD cast that talks about systems. Because I'm building out my, a whole productivity system that I made decisions about sort of my hardware and my setup based on this productivity system that I'm using, which is, that is focused on calendaring and to-do lists and writing text and just
Yeah.
a lot of creative tools. So I'd love to be able to have a conversation about integrating all of that stuff. So maybe we can schedule something like that in the future, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, this get all of us together and we'll just talk computer hardware for a bit.
Yeah, and we can talk about how guitars with backdrops. I feel like such a nerd when we start talking about the guitar backdrops. And before
Absolutely.
we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody Friday is Community Day. And so make sure you guys join for Community Day on Friday. I can't tell you like how excited I am to see like the expo is building out really, really nicely, and the tables are getting set up, and there's a bunch of stuff happening. I feel like it's almost like a real conference, you know, like what I used to do. And so it's super, it's really, really fun for me. I haven't been getting much sleep, but it's a lot of fun. So I hope to see you guys there. On Thursday, we're doing a broadcast where if you don't have a membership and just, can't afford one or can't get one right now, and you want to go to Community Day, join us on Thursday. I'll get you guys in. So, yeah, and that's it. Thanks, Tom, for doing this.
No, it's been a real pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a
Bye.
great day.